Hello, my name's Justin the Clue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're talking about a legend in the cinema field. Yes, we're talking about Godfrey Ho.
A.K.A. Tim Ashby, Alton Chung, Chester Yang, Godfrey Hall, Christ Hanna, perhaps most aptly, Ed Wu. He has, on IMDb, I counted, 86 pseudonyms.
That's insane.
That's right.
Godfrey Ho is a guy that if you watched a ninja film that was in the 80s or 90s and was very confusing and you were not sure what was going on and it felt like a bunch of movies were edited together, number one, you were right. Number two, it was probably directed by Godfrey Ho.
Godfrey Ho has directed at least 118 films. Nobody knows the exact number for sure. Some of his films include Ninja Champion, Ninja Dragon, Ninja Hunt, Ninja Kill, Operation Golden Dragon, Ninja Project Daredevils, Ninja Demons Massacre, Ninja in Action, Ninja Terminator, Robo Vampire.
I eyeballed his IMDb list, and he had about 50-ish films that have ninja in the title.
I'd like to share with you a piece of dialogue from his masterpiece, U.S. Catman, Lethal Track. I'm very sorry, Mr. Kitty Cat. The plan has already been set in motion. Watch your lips, shithead, or I'll put you over my knee and spank your bottom for you. I'm gonna burn you alive. I always liked hot pussy.
Now, if people are rushing out to go watch U.S. Catman, don't do it. Go to YouTube and watch a 30-minute, 25-minute edit of the movie. Why is that? Why is the good part only 25 minutes, Will?
You may be wondering, how can a man be as prolific as Godfrey Ho? Well, it's because he only directed some parts of his movies.
And directed is a shaky word for some of them.
He and his producer, Joseph Lai, the founder of International Finance Development Films and Arts Limited, also known as IFD, bought the rights to a bunch of Korean, Thai, Japanese, Chinese movies, many of them unreleased, many of them unfinished, all of them bad, because they got them for cheap, and they used these unreleased films as the raw material to build their own movies. Oftentimes their movies would have maybe an hour of footage that they recycled and then maybe 30 or 20 minutes of footage that they shot themselves. Oftentimes the same footage from movie to movie to movie.
But how would they do it? How would they make movie after movie that are made up of a bunch of different sources? Well, they weren't doing it very well. And they would have a character in one movie pick up a phone and talk and then cut to new footage of someone on the phone and then they would communicate. This would happen maybe once, sometimes twice, and that was the only link the scenes would have.
And one of the most notorious things about these movies were the washed-up actor Richard Harrison came to Hong Kong to act in, a few of them. And he found his footage in 20 or 25 of them. How was Godfrey Ho able to do this? By shooting without sound and by dubbing all the soundtrack later so that, poof, you've got a new plot.
And also, Richard Harrison, in that new footage that he shot, was dressed as a ninja. And how do you shoot new footage with someone that's a ninja? You just lift the mask up a little bit. Boom, you have a new actor and you can do a whole new bunch of stuff.
This is another way that you can create a Frankenstein monster out of somebody else's movie and your new movie. Let's say it's a movie that's a love triangle drama about two men and one woman who are wrapped up in a forgery business. It has no action. It has no suspense. It has nothing. How do you
spice it up?
Yeah, how do you spice it up?
How do you add a little bit of Japanese flavor?
Well, let's just say that it turns out the whole time these three people were actually ninjas.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's how you've combined it with your new ninja movie, by suddenly having three people who have ninja masks over their faces, and you've been told that love triangle you spent the whole movie with, that's them.
And you're being very generous with the linking of plots here, because that is probably a very high-level example of Godfrey Ho linking. Most of the time, they're just completely unrelated. And you're watching the movie going, what does this awful, Thai war film have to do with Catman going to fight bad guys? But let's talk about Godfrey Ho a little bit. I want to talk about the history of his life, as little as we have about it. Fact of the matter is, all of this is speculative, because everybody involved with IFD and the other companies that Godfrey Ho would go on to work for They lie about everything if they're interviewed.
They're legitimate businessmen.
That's right. As you noticed on the IFD website, which looks like it was made in 1996.
IFD is still in business, technically.
And at the bottom it says, "Do not steal our intellectual property," which made me laugh and laugh and laugh. So, Godfrey Ho was born in 1948, and he worked as an assistant on a bunch of Shaw Brothers films, including Marco Polo, which happened to have Richard Harrison in the cast, which is how they met.
Shaw Brothers, of course, the big studio in Hong Kong in the early 70s. Godfrey Ho apprenticed under the great filmmaker Chang Che.
Who directed Marco Polo.
That's right, and there's one particular film, The Blood Brothers, in which Godfrey Ho was the first AD. The second AD?
John Woo.
So, like ships passing in the night.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Godfrey Ho decided to become a filmmaker himself. He wanted to branch out. But
he wanted to make art.
But there was no way that he could compete with, Shaw Brothers or Golden Harvest or those other studios. But what he realized was there was an international market for Hong Kong films, an undiscriminating international market.
So what's interesting about Godfrey Ho is that he did not make his movies for the Chinese market. He made them for the international market because he felt that he could fool these people with these films that he was cobbling together. But he wouldn't be able to do that without Joseph Lai and sometimes said to be Joseph Lai's wife, Betty Chan. As me and Will talked about before we started recording, we weren't sure if it was Godfrey Ho's wife or if she was Godfrey Ho herself or himself. All this stuff is up in the air.
There is also a mysterious man by the name of Thomas Tang. Joseph Lai and Thomas Tang are technically the co-founders of IFD. Thomas Tang died mysteriously in a fire in the 90s.
After Godfrey Ho sold him the rights to IFD, which was being investigated for some unlawful business practices.
So IFD, their offices did burn down. 40 people died.
Including Thomas Tang.
Including the mysterious Thomas Tang, including the master prince to many of their films, actually.
So the police could investigate this Thomas Tang fellow, but, a few years later, films started to appear directed by Thomas Tang.
Who knows what caused the fire?
Thomas Tang.
Yeah, who knows? But people did die.
Did they?
That's what I read.
Who knows? We don't know anything.
The mystery.
This is like a David Lynchian world, the universe of Godfrey Ho and how these films came to be.
So Godfrey Ho started his directorial career making a lot of low-budget kung fu movies.
His first movie was called The Blazing Ninja.
He made a lot of films with Dragon Lee, who was a South Korean martial artist, a Bruce Lee clone.
A low-rent Bruce Lee clone.
He was in the movie The Clones of Bruce Lee, in fact.
That's right.
But a lot of movies like The Dragon, the Hero, Dragon Lee versus the Five Brothers, I'm forgetting the rest of the titles. They're all interchangeable. Some of them are fun,
Yeah, but what Godfrey Ho is most famous for, again, are ninjas. So me and Will watched the monument in the filmography of Godfrey Ho, the one that people talk about the most, and that's Ninja Terminator. Why is this one picked out of every one of them? I would say that it's probably because its distribution on VHS was the biggest, or maybe it played a lot on television.
I think in addition to that, there are two reasons. One, the title, Ninja Terminator.
But there's so many great titles of like Ninja Commando Squad, Ninja etc.
Yeah, okay, but the other reason is this is actually one of the few Godfrey Ho movies that I think is entertaining all the way through. So the movie that this movie has been, jerry-rigged around is actually kind of entertaining.
Yeah, it's a South Korean picture called The Uninvited Guest of the Star Fairy, which came out in 1984 and 1986. It was actually a film that was made by a director who, according to IMDb, has like 80 credits. A lot of the footage stolen by repurposed by Godfrey Ho and edited into his own film. And we should point out that, Godfrey Ho is a director who has no qualms about, dropping some Star Wars or some Indiana Jones or some Superman music all over his films.
Uninvited Guest also stars Huang Zhang Li, who some of you may know as the villain in Drunken Master.
A super kicker.
Yeah, and he really does kick. So there are a lot of pretty solid fight scenes in this movie.
Completely disconnected from any kind of narrative sense.
So the plot of Ninja Terminator, which I had a hard time following, I have to admit, even though it's quite simple.
I had no idea what was going on.
According to IMDb, the plot is that 3 ninja masters are trying to find the golden ninja Warrior, I think it's called.
The Golden Ninja Warrior.
It's a statue that when they connect the three parts of the statue, and these three parts have been dispersed, but when they connect them, it gives the bearer untold powers.
And so this is a movie, because we have no idea what's going on in the plot, the individual scenes have to stand out. And boy, do they do. Richard Harrison, an actor, unfortunately way past his prime, wearing mascara under his eyes, because I guess it looks more ninja-like.
I guess.
Picking up the phone to give a little call with Garfield, I guess, because his phone is one of those old Garfield phones.
Yes, this is the kind of filmmaker we're talking about here. Richard Harrison is talking into a Garfield phone, and no comment is made on it.
And his wife, in one sequence, which was probably the highlight of the film for me, walks in the room and goes, "I'm making your favorite." And he's like, "Oh, you're making crab?" And she replies with, "I'm making drunken crab." And then suddenly she screams. He looks in, and all the crabs are on the ground, and she's just screaming. So Richard Harrison picks up like a dart, throws it. You see a crab get stabbed on camera with a dart. The scene ends, never mentioned again.
There's another iconic scene where a little toy robot, and I'm talking like maybe a foot tall toy robot, bursts into Richard Harrison's apartment and starts sending him a threatening message. That scene and the Garfield phone scene are probably the two most iconic moments in the Godfrey Ho filmography. Richard Harrison looks very unhappy to be here.
Yes.
Richard Harrison...
Almost as if he realized he was going to be stretched over 20 films.
Richard Harrison's biggest contribution to filmmaking was that he turned down the part of the man with no name in Sergio Leone's Westerns. Probably lived to regret it for the rest of his life. I know we're big fans of Richard Harrison in the film Challenge of the Tiger with Bruce Lee.
Classic Bruce Lee picture where Richard Harrison is a ladies' man who likes to play naked tennis.
And he looks drunk all the way through. In this movie, he looks merely unhappy.
How drunk would he have to get, do you think, for him to start saying, "I could have been a contender"? Probably 2 beers, I would assume.
I don't think the Sergio Leone movies would have been quite as big with Richard Harrison.
No, there's a bunch of actors who are in Sergio Leone-like roles that didn't blow up to anything, but I think Clint Eastwood and that director made something special. Just like Richard Harrison and Godfrey Ho made something special. And what's weird about these movies is that Godfrey Ho obviously lives in a very narrow world. One where Richard Harrison is a box office draw.
Yes.
Because it might as well be any white guy. Why repurpose this footage? Because people don't see his name and go, "Ooh, Richard Harrison, I'm a fan of his."
Well, this is something that Godfrey Ho and Joseph Lai eventually learned, because what they found was that the reason they cast Richard Harrison in the first place was that international market wanted to see white people.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually they realized it can be just any white person, so they would put up ads in the Chungking Mansions, which is a district in Hong Kong where a lot of low-rent B&B type places would be. And they'd say, "Wanted Caucasian actors, no experience necessary."
I was going to say Caucasian asshole.
I know.
Well, looking at the actors in Godfrey Ho film, they are not thespians, if you will. They are dubbed, but they also look like the everyman pulled off the street. Like the star of Catman, if you will.
Yeah, U.S. Catman.
That's so... Is there, there's a Hong Kong Catman? Because there isn't.
U.S. Catman Lethal Track, which is sometimes known as just Catman in the Lethal Track. Mm-hmm. This movie stars a fellow by the name of Jonathan Isgar, who actually made something of a career of being a white guy in Hong Kong movies in the 90s. He's in Operation Condor.
Once Upon a Time in China.
That's right. He's not a good actor. He's a doughy white guy.
Mm-hmm. But when he's scratched by a radioactive cat, he gains, I'm not sure what powers. He can light cigarettes with his mind?
It's unspecified what powers he has, but he has powers. This movie was kind of an attempt to rip off Tim Burton's Batman. And in fact, there's a scene where Jonathan Isgar puts his 2 hands together to deflect bullets like Michael Keaton does. But his costume isn't so great. He's really just wearing a black tracksuit, or maybe it's just a black coat, and he's got some shitty goggles on.
Which he can also reach in, pull the Catman logo off, and use as a throwing star.
Yeah. And he does this amazing face whenever he's posing. He'll cross his arms and he'll just put on this gigantic frown.
Like a pouty baby who doesn't get candy.
He's got a sidekick who is in the CIA okay, I think, but his sidekick doesn't have a costume.
No, and his sidekick dies in the closing moments of the film, just like any kid's picture, or by that I mean any Godfrey Ho kid's picture, which are all rated R and filled with swears.
Oh yeah. Catman and his sidekick are chasing after Father Cheever, I believe is his name.
Yeah, who is a supernatural priest?
Yes. Now, about an hour of the movie is this Thai, prisoner of war film, which is very violent, very unpleasant, and literally no connection whatsoever to the
No
Catman
martial
plot.
arts, no nothing.
I can't remember. My attention was drifting through a lot of this, but I could not even spot a single line of dialogue that connected these two threads.
So, the Catman character is introduced in the first 3 minutes, and then it takes 15 minutes for him to come back.
Mm-hmm.
That's some lazy-ass filmmaking.
So this movie's got 25, I think, top-notch minutes.
Which you can find on YouTube.
Hilarious stuff.
Which the people dubbing had to be making it a joke.
Yeah.
Because, that line you read off the top of this episode... that is just an example of the great stuff you see in this. At one point, Catman goes, "I feel so strong!" And it's so funny.
I think Godfrey Ho, as much as I enjoy his body of work, I think he may be the worst filmmaker we've ever devoted an episode to.
Well, there is imagination there. And, even if you look at Ninja Terminator, some of that ninja stuff, it's kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
There's a scene where Ninja throws a throwing star at Richard Harrison, and he, catches it on the blade and, spins. Those are some, basic meat and potatoes Hong Kong action beats.
Some of his compositions are surprisingly competent.
But I think he has such a particular worldview, because he was obviously obsessed with ninjas. That is insane to me that he made so many ninja films over such a long period of time.
But, I mean, his worldview is simply commercial.
It is, but it's also very askew. He doesn't understand,
Yeah.
what makes a movie and what people want.
Yeah.
He thinks they want Ninja Harrison. Catman is him just going, what sounds like Batman? I guess Catman? And then giving the guy no Catman-like superpowers.
But also, in the footage that he shoots, he does give people what they want. The footage he shoots is very fast-paced. It's got a lot of, acrobatics and dumb, fun bullshit.
And the thing about that is, that stuff is hard. I think if, Godfrey Ho just wanted to mail it in, he could have done 100 different, easier things than what he's doing.
But also, an hour of his movies are boring and bad.
Not all of them. Like you said,
Most of them.
Ninja Terminator, the fight scenes are really fun, the parts that are not related to it.
So this is where he comes across as, I think, very cynical.
Yes, well, he's a very cynical filmmaker.
Yeah.
When he's interviewed, he will deny that he even edited movies together. And then when the interviewer is like, "What are you talking about? We have proof." He goes, "Oh, well, okay, so maybe I did edit films together, but I shot both films," which is, again, a blatant lie.
Sometimes you'll hear people talk about Godfrey Ho, and they'll kind of jokily talk about, "Oh, he's so radical. He's such an experimental filmmaker."
No, he's just
as a joke. He's not radical to any good end.
Yeah, he's just exploitative. He wants to make money.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe he had a Citizen Kane in him, and he's just raising the funds to finally be able to make that picture. Because as the 90s came along, Godfrey Ho actually started directing all of feature films.
Yeah.
He did a Girls with Guns film called Lethal Panther, and he also did a picture in America, where he ended up for a few years because he realized that's where the market is.
Well, his last film, which was released in 2000, called Manhattan Chase, was set in New York.
And it starred Cynthia Rothrock. And me and you also watched probably Godfrey Ho's most famous picture.
I think so.
And that's Undefeatable. And you've probably seen a clip from it already.
The final fight scene of Undefeatable was an early kind of viral hit on YouTube as the worst fight scene ever filmed.
It's the one where the two guys, one of them that has a curly mullet, both rip their shirts off before they go and kung fu fight.
And they have big muscly abs, and they're always flexing, and they do absurd slow-mo punches at each other, and they're always yelling really loud during the fight. And it has this, obnoxious synth and saxophone score that plays over it. And that, by the way, plays over the whole movie.
And at the end, the killer gets his eye pierced by a hook that then raises in the air, where Cynthia Rothrock and her, I don't know who he is, sidekick, get to go, I'll be seeing you, and I'll keep my eye on you, and other eye puns like that.
I think I saw this clip maybe for the first time 10 years ago.
Yeah, and on Real Player and like Blocky Video.
Yeah, and I would watch it and I would wonder, like, why hasn't this movie become better known? Why isn't this The Room? And now I know why.
Sexual assault.
It's a very problematic film. The plot is that there's this killer who A, has mommy issues, and B, his girlfriend, or maybe it's his wife, who he rapes.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say.
In one long, unbroken scene, like it's irreversible or something
Awful.
like that.
But she walks out on him, and, you know, the combination of these two problematic relationships with women lead to him going on this killing spree of women, and he tricks himself into thinking that all these women are his departed wife.
Yeah, if he sees anybody in a flower print dress, he goes, why did you leave me? You have to come with me. And then he gouges out their eyes after sexually assaulting them.
So there's a bit of a cognitive dissonance here between like how ridiculous the movie is and how funny and absurd the style is. Because it's really like that 80s action style, but really overheated. There's a juxtaposition between that and how unpleasant the subject matter is.
But you do get Cynthia Rothrock doing some great kung fu kicks and punches. If you don't know who Cynthia Rothrock is, I feel like we've probably mentioned her before. Mm-hmm. She starred in movies like Yes, Madame. She was in Shanghai Express, the Sammo Hung film.
And she had an American vehicle by Robert Klaus, who did Enter the Dragon, called China O'Brien.
And she never really, like, became the star
that she should have been.
Yeah, I mean, she's not that good an actor, but martial artists don't need to be, right? Mm. And she is very fun to watch on screen. She's very not tall, which makes it really fun when she fights like big dudes and stuff like that, because she can move. She won a bunch of medals in kind of martial arts forms.
The thing about Hong Kong action movies of the 90s, even one as bad as this, as low level as this, you're going to get some very good fight scenes.
Yeah.
And you're going to get some really amazing stunts. There's one stunt in this movie in particular
that me and Will both mentioned to each other because we could not believe how crazy it was.
Somebody gets kicked out of the second floor of a parking garage, like lands on their back on a car and then falls off the car.
Onto cement.
And it's just like a snuff film, basically.
Yeah, but that's what we go to Hong Kong action cinema to see, is like this crazy, painful stuff that really only me and you and other fans like that will notice. Because, like, someone being kicked and hitting a post and falling, like, most people that watch that, like, they don't register that that person's back. Like, they probably had no protection on it.
God bless this stuntman for, you know, just doing something that, you know, may have concussed them, frankly.
Yeah, that's right.
In a Godfrey Ho movie in the 90s.
It was important for them. Like, even a fight scene at one point of, like, Cynthia Rothrock fighting another Catman with claws on a bunch of barrels, like, that's the gag. Like, that's really dangerous. You could have done something much easier than that. But nope, you're going to find that in a Godfrey Ho picture, which I think is what makes him important. This mixture of, like, these crazy stunts with this slapdash way of putting it together.
I want to ask you about one more Godfrey Ho movie that you watched this week. I watched about 30 minutes of it right after I woke up in the morning once. I felt like I was still half in a dream world while I was watching it, and it felt very hallucinatory, and I thought, I'm not getting any of this. Maybe I have to start it again some other day, but I never did. And it's Thunder of Gigantic Serpent.
Yes. This is the one that I wanted to watch because it was a giant monster movie, and I'm like, Godfrey Ho doing this! It's actually taken from a Taiwanese monster picture called, I believe, like, King Snake. And it's the story of a young girl and her snake that takes some chemical poison and grows giant and then kills seemingly all of Taiwan. And that stuff is really fun, but it's also, there's like a dissonance to it because the snake is killing all these people and you're like, whoa, oh man, this is really rough. And then it's intercut with, again, completely unrelated footage of, there's no ninjas, but there's commando guys fighting and stuff like that.
I think the star of this one is a guy called Pierre Kirby, who, you know, was just some random white guy actor who starred in a bunch of Godfrey Ho's movies. There's another actor, a black actor whose name escapes me, but he was in something like Black Ninja or something. He was just a guy that kind of paid his way into being a Godfrey Ho movie star.
And I mean, like, if you want a monster movie and you want that practical, like, cheap-looking stuff, the Thunder Snake is perfect. Like, go and watch that one because it just delivers. Like, you get a bunch of that monster action, but be ready for 45 minutes of nothing. Just the footage from the original movie that he's copying, and he can't figure out a story to tell. They're just hanging around going, wait, I haven't seen the little girl or even the ninjas. Like, that's the problem with Godfrey Ho, is that he wasn't good at doing what he was doing.
No.
He just kind of slapped it together whichever way that he could.
Years ago, I had this idea for a blog I was going to write called Children of a Lesser Godfrey. Really, I just liked that title, and I wanted to build something around it where I would watch all the Godfrey Ho movies and write about them as if they were all taking place in the same universe, and talk about how, because if you watch enough of these movies, you'll see the same sets, the same posters in the background, the same Garfield phone, the same this, that, and like, it would become like this almost like Lynchian bizarro world.
You should almost write it from the perspective of like Godfrey Ho shooting these movies and like what's going on, and the actors, what are they thinking when they're in front of the cameras being directed by him or by whoever it was. Maybe Godfrey Ho doesn't really exist.
But after writing 2 or 3 unpublished articles,
no more.
I thought, this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
What am I trying to prove
There's
here?
actually like hundreds of Godfrey Ho fan sites because like the volume of content that he delivered and the craziness of it is enough to get people into it, but it's also numbing because it's the same thing over and over and over again.
And yet there are still so many like odd and interesting detours in his career, you know?
I mean, like, he was a guy that, while he did stick in the ninja thing, he followed fads like in 1994 where he came back to Hong Kong after his U.S. sojourn and made a ripoff of Men Behind the Sun.
Right. I want to see that one.
No, don't watch that. Whoever's listening to this, because Will will explain to you what Men Behind the Sun is.
Men Behind the Sun is a really gruesome and ugly Hong Kong exploitation movie about Japanese war atrocities.
Yep. And so the idea of Godfrey Ho remaking it, that's real fascinating to me.
Yeah. Because he'll be shameless, you know.
He'll be like Jess Franco.
Yeah.
But I think the thing with Godfrey Ho is there isn't that Jess Franco-ness, like, personality through every film.
Jess Franco's, like, obsessions appear in his film.
Jess Franco had to make movies, it feels like. Yeah. While Godfrey Ho was making movies to make money. Maybe Godfrey Ho, if you dug deep enough, you'd find that Jess Franco beating heart.
I think you want to think it's there.
Yeah.
Because it's sad to think of somebody who devoted so much of his life to making movies and so much energy who was simply a cynical hack.
But to what end? Like, why would he make this many? Like, his filmography is one of an obsessive.
Why would you spend your life doing anything? Because you need money.
I guess, yeah. But, you know, Godfrey Ho, he's okay now because he's currently teaching at the Hong Kong Film Academy, one of the most prestigious film academies in Hong Kong. And I'm not even joking. Like, he teaches classes every day.
A widely circulated quote from an interview with him from about 10 years ago. He said, "I used to be a movie maker. Now I am teaching people to make movies. It really makes me glad when my students are happily showing me their works. Only if you've been through the whole process can you understand how satisfying and delightful it is." And
the thing about Godfrey Ho is that he's a brick wall. He cannot answer any questions about his movies. He will just lie. You won't get anything straight of how all of this stuff came to be. Probably because the guy that's Godfrey Ho now, just an actor.
Maybe he died in that IFD fire.
Yeah, maybe Thomas Tang was the true Godfrey Ho.
So, Godfrey Ho. Watch Ninja Terminator, have some fun.
Yeah, watch Undefeatable. Don't watch it with your friends.
Yeah.
Oh, and I don't want to forget to say that Undefeatable, all directed by Godfrey Ho. He couldn't help himself from going to shoot another 30 minutes with Robin Shou and Cynthia Rothrock and releasing it under the title Bloody Mary Killer.
He repurposed his own movie and Godfrey Ho'd it.
And yeah, shot new footage. And the new footage is even grosser than the stuff that's in the US version.
Oh man, I gotta check that out.
All right, so letters. As per usual, you can send us emails at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to go and rate and review us on iTunes.
Yeah, thanks.
We've said it a few episodes ago, so go and do it. Even though that, like, I don't even think it's iTunes anymore. It's like Apple something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
that'll take some getting adjusted to.
So this letter's from William Pond. He goes, "Hi guys, I really enjoyed the Spotlight on 1939 podcast. Gone with the Wind is one of those films I greatly admire due to its many technical and narrative merits, yet after seeing once I have never been keen on revisiting. A bit like Irreversible. Gone with the Wind, Irreversible. Great double bill. I was particularly interested to hear your chat on The Wizard of Oz. Here in the UK, the Bank Halifax are currently running an ad campaign where their staff are digitally inserted into clips from the film and interact with Dorothy and the gang. The TV ads are being regularly played over here, and the posters are plastered all over Waterloo Station, which I go through every day for work. Frankly, it makes me very angry that a great piece of culturally significant art is being used to sell mortgages. How do you guys feel about this? I fear that once they have got it to work once, it will become a common feature of advertising campaigns. I've included a link to the advert below from YouTube, which I hope you can play in Canada. Cheers, Will. Well, the thing about, repurposing dead stars from famous movies and using them in ad campaigns has existence since, the 70s.
Well, there's that really famous case in the 90s where there's that, that famous clip of Fred Astaire dancing on the walls and dancing on the ceiling. They had it, but they superimposed a vacuum into his hand.
Yeah,
which is I don't know, not wild about that.
Gene Kelly breakdancing on the Singing in the Rain set, and they superimpose his face on somebody else's body.
Yeah, I think on some of these they have to get the heirs' permission to do it. I mean, I don't really like it.
No, I don't like it either because it's crass commercialism. It's just they want to make money. If you want to remix the film in some other way and do something interesting with it, it doesn't really bother me. But the idea of using it in ads, because it's just branding. They're just selling you something and go hey, you like Wizard of Oz? And you'll like this.
Yeah.
And it's who makes the money in that scenario?
Stop spoiling the thing I like. Stop weaponizing the thing I like to sell me a mortgage.
We can't afford mortgages, so it's not really for us. No. So, thank you for the letter. This next one's from Daniel Wasserman. He goes, Hi, Justin and Will. Thank you very much for the podcast. Two directors that I would love to hear you discuss are Lizzie Borden, the director of Born in Flames and Working Girls, and Slava Tsurkerman, Liquid Sky. Daniel. Well, thanks for the letter, Daniel. And Lizzie Borden is one that we've had on our list for a long time.
Yeah, we've seen, we went to see Born in Flames together, and I think there's there's stuff that we can do. Working Girls, but also I'm very interested, I haven't seen it, but I'm interested in Love Crimes, which was this notorious flop that she made, an erotic thriller, but from a woman's point of view, with Sean Young in the early 90s, which, again, notorious, Razzie winning flop.
Yeah, but it got, re-edited, and I believe she was able to, reinsert her footage, so it's probably available somewhere.
For all the bad reviews, I don't believe it could possibly be without merit.
And Lizzie Borden is a fascinating figure because she did do something as iconic as Born in Flames, and she only had those two other films, and that was, it.
I am interested in her as a topic.
Yeah, and, I don't know what she went to do after, do you?
No, she's had movies that she's tried to develop, but they haven't happened. There was an interview with her in, I think, the last issue of CinemaScope that I really ought to read. Yeah, because Born in Flames did get re-released, and she did kind of go on the circuit with it, appearing where she could. At the screening that we went to that was put on by Sarah Ty Black, she participated in a Skype Q&A afterwards, and was very open with answers, and it was very interesting stuff, and I'm sure it'll probably get some big deluxe Criterion release or something like that. So yeah, watch out for that in the eventual future. As for Liquid Sky, we actually have something planned on that. We will probably do a premium episode on that movie very soon.
Yep, I hope you're a Patreon subscriber. Letter writer, I didn't check, but let me just say you probably want to become one before next week.
Yeah.
So, our last letter is from Mitchell Greenberg, and he goes, long-time listener, first-time caller, big fan of the show. You're both so erudite and enthusiastic about cinema. I can't wait to listen to your show each week without fail.
Erudite, I like that.
I'm emailing in hopes of rectifying a wrong committed by both of you during your long take episode. I was personally offended by your omission of the climactic chase sequence in Operation Avalanche, a film by Toronto's own Matt Johnson. I believe I am not alone in this feeling, and while I failed to contact David Davidson, who was too busy recovering from Cannes, I reasonably believe that he would share my sentiments.
David Davidson, the famous @Teal Film Review on Twitter.
And we didn't mention Operation Avalanche because there's a lot of movies that have one long takes in them.
But that's a good long take.
It is a very good one.
I liked Operation Avalanche.
That's like an action scene kind of take. If you haven't seen the movie, check it out because it's a really fun movie. And the letter continues, in order to redress this issue... Oh, wait, I also forgot a long take in a personal favorite of mine, Universal Soldier Regeneration.
Okay,
So check that one out. And Close Range, directed by Isaac Florentine. In order to redress this issue, I believe the production of an episode on contemporary Toronto filmmakers would be an appropriate remedy. I would absolutely love an episode about Toronto cinema, but not dedicated to the excellent but overly visible filmmakers like Adam Agoyan, Deepa Mehta, and David Cronenberg. Rather, I'd love to listen to an episode dedicated to the Matt Johnsons, the Justin the Clues, I like that, and the Pavin Moody's of this great city.
The Frank DeAngelos.
Exactly. We've talked about doing like a Toronto thing, but I think it would be a little bit weird for us to talk about that kind of stuff. I mean, if Will wants to do a whole episode dedicated to me, yeah, I'm cool with that. Maybe after I pass away in like 100 years.
We did a commentary track on one of your movies.
That's right, we did, on the Monster with a Movie Camera film, which you can purchase at canmakeproductions.com.
That is the Justin DeClue episode of the Important Cinema Club.
That's
basically.
right. Yeah, because you basically like interviewed me about like why I make movies, why I do all this stuff.
Yeah.
So if you want that episode, check out that commentary track. And as far as the other people, yeah, a little too close to that, I think.
Yeah.
I think it would be a little bit too weird. Additionally, I'd love an episode dedicated to Rainer Werner Fassbender's late period work, namely the, oh man, I'm going to have to try to say this, Bundesrepublik Deutschland trilogy and Berlin Alexanderplatz. And an episode dedicated to Wong Kar-wai would be amazing too.
Okay, first of all, there is a Wong Kar-wai episode.
There is.
I'm proud to say.
Ooh, I'm not proud of that episode, but take it a listen. That's a fun one.
Berlin Alexanderplatz is really long.
12 hours.
I'm sorry. I would like to talk about Fassbender at some point. You know, I've probably seen, 6 or 7 Fassbender movies over the years, but he had such a huge output. I don't feel like I have a great handle on his work right now.
Yeah, you know, the problem with the Fassbender episode, and I know we're going to get it to eventually, but you're going to hear a lot of, I wish I could watch more of his movies when we do it. Because, like, we've talked about this before, but, like, we have to challenge ourselves sometimes, where, like, Will or me will pitch something to the other person where we go, I guess.
I do like Fassbender.
I do like Fassbender as well.
Yeah.
But it's that position of, like, we have to talk about him from a position of not even, like, close to being an expert.
Well, yeah, like, because he has fans who are...
Like, they know everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, we've done a lot of episodes of people that listen and have come up to us and been like, you missed this and this and this.
Yeah.
And we're like, listen, we try. We release an episode every week.
I think you'll agree that the Godfrey Ho episode was very authoritative.
Anyway, thank you very much for the letter, Mitch Greenberg. Well, good news. Next week, we're going to be doing a German director. We're going to be doing Werner Herzog.
Specifically, the bad Werner Herzog. Listen, we all know Herzog. Fitzcarraldo.
It's good.
This is Cinema 101 stuff.
Yeah.
But what about Scream of Stone?
Would you say that, like, Herzog is, like, hipster Cinema 101? Because I feel like, and I kind of want to talk about that
like,
as well, that they're connected together.
Yeah, like the Vice Guide to Film sort of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. And, like, what that means. So, Scream of Stone, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I want to do Scream of Stone. I guess Invincible.
Yes, which I'm the one who brought to the table, which you saw theatrically.
I did. I think Salt and Fire.
Which I haven't seen, but Will described as the ultimate example of bad Werner Herzog. Like a parody of him almost.
I'm kind of tempted. I mean, we've already got 3 movies here, but I would be tempted to talk. I probably don't need to see it again, but something like Lo and Behold. Because that's one, well, I don't know. I'll bring it up on the next episode.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about his good films in passing as well, but we don't really have anything to add to the numerous books written about him.
I think we're Herzog fans, it's fair to say. Yeah.
So check that out next week. And again, you can email us at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to become a Patreon subscriber, because this week we talked about Monster Kids. And if you're like, wait, I don't even know what that is, well, you're going to have to listen to it, because it's very interesting, I would say.
Let's just say that we're the last Monster Kids.
That's right. And it's really an episode about, like, fandom and what happens when fandom, like, eventually dies, literally, and what will continue on from that point. So that's $5 a month. You can go to patreon.com, The Important Cinema Club, to check out our page, and you'll get 4 exclusive episodes every week, and we're still pushing the summer for 150 Patreon subscribers. Once we hit that, me and Will do a brand new commentary track to all Patreon members. I mean, don't you want to be part of the Important Cinema Club?
Yes.
Like, because you're not part of it if you're not a Patreon subscriber. I mean, like, you're coming to the meetings and stuff like that as a friend, but you're not really part of the club.
Yeah.
And as per usual, you can follow us on Twitter. I'm DeClouJ, DCLOUX, and the letter J.
I'm Will Sloan, ESQ.
And my letterbox is Justin DeClue. Again, that's my name.
Oh, I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening.
Last week we talked about Ishtar. On Friday, I went to see another Elaine May movie at the Lightbox, The Heartbreak Kid.
Love it.
So good. And we watched it on a print that apparently is one of 2 prints that are known to exist.
That's crazy, because it would have been like a widely distributed film at its time.
Well,
junk 'em.
One of the prints is inaccessible. Yeah. The other print belongs to the Swedish Film Academy, and it has burned-in Swedish subtitles.
Oh, man.
The Anthology Film Archives in New York plays it every year as part of their Valentine's program.
Oh, really?
You know, aside from the Swedish subtitles, it's a beautiful print. I mean, it's a bit scratchy, but the color's great, and it really goes to show I didn't realize how nicely shot the movie is. Like, the colors, it has this, like, beautiful autumnal look to it.
Yeah, because it perfectly captures that, like, transitioning of life that Charles Grodin is going through from this vacation honeymoon to this cold kind of waspy milieu that he finds himself in.
And it's a movie that really benefits from being seen with an audience because
it's funny.
It's so funny, and the humor is so dry and so understated at times. Like, Grodin's face in the movie, he has a million just perfectly modulated little facial expressions that when you see them blown up on a 40-foot screen with an audience, so good.
What else is playing at the Elaine May retrospective? Are they doing the films she, like, wrote as well?
Yeah, so The Birdcage played, I think, and Primary Colors and some of the other ones. Yeah, because she only directed 4 films.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So when you say retrospective, it's like a weekend of films pretty much.
Sadly, Crisis in 6 Scenes has not been programmed.
That's right, her last acting role.
Yeah.
I remember how excited you were when you saw that on IMDb. You're like, Elaine May in a Woody Allen film? She and Miley Cyrus? The chemistry they'll have together.
I think Elaine May is quite fine in Crisis in 6 Scenes, actually.
Gonna be honest, haven't watched it. For obvious reasons. Why would I?
Crisis in 6 Scenes has half the plot of a normal Woody Allen movie and is twice the length.
Wait, more than twice the length.
Yeah, it's like
long.
140 minutes or something in total. Yeah, brutal.
We watched another film during the weekend, which was at the Laserblatt Film Society, the programming series that I run at the Royal Cinema. We got to show The Instructor, a film that I had heard about and I had assumed was something that was already going around and people knew it was a cult film. But after I programmed it, realized, nope, not true. I mean, some of the die-in-the-wool people have seen it and have touted how amazing it is, but, like, it hasn't really played anywhere else, and it doesn't have the following that I believe it should have.
Where was this movie made?
It was made in Akron, Ohio, and it was made by one dude who runs a karate studio, and he just wanted to make a motion picture with family and friends, I assume, because everybody in the film acted in this one thing and never acted again.
It's very amateurish. It very much feels like a movie that a bunch of friends got together and made. Like, it has a bit of a charming Matt Farley quality at times, where, like, there's that one scene where it's like a fight scene next to a pond, and there's like a patio with a restaurant behind it where people are just eating while this fight scene's going on. And I thought, this is like a not self-aware Matt Farley film.
Yeah, but I think that, like, The Instructor, what it does perfectly other than that is that it's so entertaining throughout.
Oh, yeah.
While the people don't know exactly how movies are supposed to work, like storytelling or pacing or anything like that, they do want to entertain you.
Okay, the other amazing thing about this movie is they sold it to Shapiro Glickenhaus. James Glickenhaus was the director of such films as The Protector with Jackie Chan and The Exterminator. And they, ran a video business, and they said, okay, this is fine, but you don't have a climax. Here's a bit of money to shoot a climax. Go do it. And there's this endless
hard-boiled, like, climax. They took this money and they blew it up as big as they could.
It's this long car chase that has a couple of, like, vehicular stunts in it, but, like, the car chase isn't quite as fast as it should be, but it's really long, and then eventually it becomes a motorcycle chase, and then they start fighting on a waterfall.
Yes, down a waterfall as well.
And it was at this point that I was, like, gasping with laughter.
This is a film that, like, these people don't know how to sell their technique on screen as fighters, but man, they're going for it.
Oh, man.
At one point, someone picks up a chainsaw and starts like waving it at the guy, and you realize when it hits a tree that the chainsaw is actually working.
Yes.
And they're just like, I will just do this and it'll be fine. And, like, it's also a movie that has all those perfect regional film touches that you want, which is like, the star looks like a miniature Burt Reynolds for some reason.
Burt Reynolds means like Louis Guzman.
Yeah. And lines come from a place that you're like, what like, they must have been improvising this. Like, at one point, a fat, balding ninja attacks a bunch of kids, and when one of the kids kicks him in the nuts, he goes, "Oh, I'm gonna get you little sluts!"
Yes.
It's like, what is going on?
So good.
And, like, the fact that it, like, doesn't have a cult is crazy. I mean, I have my finger on the pulse, and it may be appearing on Red Letter Media in a few weeks.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to blow up then, and hopefully, along with another little film by a man named Matt Farley. What would you think would happen if Matt Farley's movies, like, they did a Red Letter Media episode on them?
First of all, I think Matt Farley's and Charles Roxburgh are good filmmakers.
Yes.
So I hope they treat them fairly.
Yes.
But if they did, if Matt Farley blows up, then that would be great.
Yeah, because, like, those, like, Red Letter Media reviews get millions and millions of hits.
Yeah.
And Matt Farley's movies are on YouTube. So, like, someone could see that review and just go and watch them instantly.
I hope it happens.
Oh, man, I hope it happens so much as well. And, I was a little bit tentative, and I remember in the Matt Farley episode we did, when I interviewed him at the end of the episode, I said, "You wouldn't want this, would you?" And he went, "Yes, please. As long as people watch my movie, that's all that matters."